Confused by finances, investing, estate and retirement planning? Well, we went to school so you don't have to. Welcome to Finances and with Kathy and Norma.
Welcome to Finances and Car Buying. We went to school so you don't have to. I'm Norma and I'm here with Kathy. Today we wanted to talk about car buying, methods to go about it, what to do to prepare, and how to handle the process. Buying a car could be a really stressful event. I know I get anxious when I know I'm needing a new car for, whatever reason. Walking in and having to handle those negotiations, especially on your own, can be very intimidating. I know I tend to avoid it at all costs.
They make you want to avoid it. They absolutely make you not want to do it.
Well, it's funny. Some years ago, when those Scions came out, it was actually quite exciting. And I can't remember what other car company did it, but my husband at the time got a Scion. It was no negotiating, no nothing. It was sticker price. You walk in, you know what you're paying, and you walk out having paid that amount. There may have been some dealer incentives, which we'll talk about dealer incentives later, but there may have been some dealer incentives. But aside from that, there was no haggling, which really takes the pressure off of the car buying process.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is that you have to do your research ahead of time. And if you haven't, then you're just at the mercy of the car salesman.
Yeah. And that research is important to be done regardless of whether you're getting a new car or a used car. If you're getting a new car, you really have to understand what you want, and you have to understand, what the market price is for that car before you walk into a dealership. But before you get to that point, in order to decide whether you want a used car, there's a few things you should really think about. There's some people that really just value that lifestyle of having a brand new car and having all the bells and whistles. But the fact is that when you buy a new car, that car loses about 20% of its value the second you drive it off the lot. Sometimes it's more economical to get yourself a used car that maybe is just a year or two older, than the current year. There's what they call lease buybacks. So there's some people that they've leased the car, they don't want it anymore, and they've brought it back for whatever reason. They couldn't make the payments, whatever the case is. But you can get yourself a used car that's really, new to you and only maybe a year or two old with really not that many miles. So, depreciation is definitely something that you want to consider when you buy yourself a new car. Is it really worth losing that much value the second you drive off a lot? And other things that really come into play is that if you've got a used car versus a newer car, you actually have lower insurance rates. Your registration is cheaper. if you're in a state that has personal property taxes, those would be cheaper because they're based on the value of the car. And then you can really just move up, to get yourself a nicer car with the same amount of money that you would have spent on a brand new car. So again, these are things you can consider before you decide whether you want a new or a used car. And honestly, if you've got a used car, you get a little less stress. You don't really worry about those dings at the supermarket, because it is a used car. Again, you really want to consider, whether you really want to spend that extra money just to say you've got yourself a brand new car.
So things to think about when you're buying it. You can spend $30,000 on a new car, and then you go to sell it 3 years later. You might only get $15,000. So you've lost $15,000. But if you buy that 3-year-old car, you're going to spend that $15,000, sell it 3 years later for $10,000, and then you're only losing $5,000. So if you can get a car that's only 3 years old, then you're going to get almost all the benefits of having a new car, and yet you're going to not lose as much money when you're trying to resell and move up. The other problem with the used car is you never really know the history of the car. You can know what you can know about it, but you don't know what the history is. So there's something to think about. Do you need to know what that is so that you can avoid those problems? Of course, you can always use something like Consumer Reports to check into their used car service and be able to see, well, that model of car, what kind of problems do they have? So you can be on the lookout for it when you're buying a new car.
Well, you can also get what they call a Carfax, and the Carfax will show the history of that specific car. If there's been any accidents that have been reported or anything of that nature, if there, if it was on fire, whatever the case is. And I say that because I did have a car that at one point was on fire, and I had a hard time reselling it because it came up in the Carfax. I had the car for years without an issue, but it definitely became an issue when I went to go sell the car.
One of the things that you're going to have to do, though, whether you get a new car or a used car, is you're going to have to do some research before you go, because otherwise you're really going to fall victim to what Norma was saying about being stuck in that situation of trying to get a car and not having any negotiating stance. So be able to do a research. Consumer Reports has a fabulous service that you can use. They'll tell you everything they know about new cars, and then they will tell you what their customers know about used cars so that you have something to look back on. You'll be able to know, if you do your research, if there's any incentives. Maybe there's a $3,000 if you're a firefighter or something, so that you have that knowledge before you even go in to look at the car. It's up to you, though, to find out the actual price of the car versus the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Because the bottom line is the car dealership's trying to make money, and we're not going to begrudge the fact that they want to make money. But you need to find out that difference between what the cost of the car is and what they're saying they want to sell it at, and find some meeting price in the middle, because they have to make their salary and you want to get a discount on it. So both of those things have to happen. Best way to do that is also then to just contact different dealers. Once you've test driven a car, you want to make sure that you have exactly the bells and whistles that you feel like you need for your car, but then you can just call around saying, this is exactly what I want. They want to negotiate because they want to get you that sale. So make sure that you've done research and you know what price you're willing to pay and what price you should expect to pay.
Speaking of pricing, there are a few places that you can go to see what you should be paying for that car. There's the Kelley Blue Book. There's Edmunds. You can, ask friends and see what if they've got a car that you're interested in buying, just kind of a ballpark of what they paid for it. U.S. News and World Reports has great articles when it comes to car buying as well. So you may want to this is part of the research process that you want to go through when you're buying a car. Now, as far as pricing goes, we're not just talking about the price of the actual car. The research that you should also be performing on the back end, basically, before you've walked into a dealership, is try to have maybe financing set for your car before you come in. So maybe contact the bank that you normally deal with, or just, try to check to see if there's a bank that has a really good car rate before you walk into that dealership. Because oftentimes what happens is when you get to the dealership, what they'll want to focus on is your monthly payment. So the big question that everybody hates, or the question you should really hate.
You should hate. You're right. You're right.
Question. And it's, how much do you want to pay a month? And that's usually the very first thing that they'll ask you. And that is a huge trap when it comes to car buying. And the reason we say that is because if you walk in there and you say, I want to pay no more than $350, and you're looking at a $50,000 car, and I'm just, throwing numbers out, they're going to make that $350 happen. Come heck or high water, they're going to make that happen. And one of the ways that they'll make that happen is to give you a 6 or 7 year loan. And you don't want to do that. So if you've got to pay a little extra to be in a 3-year loan, you'll actually save money on interest. So it's really important to not fall into that. How much do you want to pay per month trap? You really want to focus on the sticker price. And again, this is why the research is so important before you go in, of knowing what the sticker price is, or what the manufactured price is for the car. And for the car that you want, for the bells and whistles that you want, you don't want to pay extra for bells and whistles that you don't need. So if you do this research before you go in, you may find that they actually don't have the brand or the style car that you want, or model, a car that you want, but maybe a local dealership has it. They will actually be able to do a swap with that dealership to get you the exact model that you want. But if you walk in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, waiting to get a brand new car and don't do this research, you may end up paying more, because what they have on the lot has this extra stuff that you may or may not want. I know with my very first car, I wanted something red.
Your requirements were high.
That was it. It had to be red. And I might have been like 20, 21 years old or something. And I went with my dad, and he said, which one do you want? I said it was a Toyota Tercel, and it was $200 a month, this car. And I got in it. It was red. It was fine to me. I don't know. And it took me about a week or so to realize that I did not have power windows or power doors.
Oh, wow.
So second cars require power windows and power doors. And then I've kind of just escalated from there on my requirements. And there's still not much. I really don't ask for much these days. Whatever the car has, if, like I can deal with on a basic level. I've gotten some basic model cars because I don't personally require much. But again, the research that I didn't do at 20 years old, I kind of do now. And I do have, some other requirements when it comes to this.
I think universally, we can all say we've had some poor experience at buying a car. And so that's where you have to take your lessons learned, right? This thing that happened or whatever it is for you, that you say to yourself, well, I'm not going to let that happen. Of course, if you don't know the next thing that's going to happen, it's hard to prepare for it. But looking at the pricing and being set in that way is a big deal. One of the things that they will do is upsell you. So that just means they're going to try and convince you to move into either a higher model vehicle or that you need some things for the car that you don't actually need. When I was doing my research, I was reading articles to salesmen, talking to them how to create urgency, that you have to hurry up and have these better things in your car. Make sure to use lots of details in describing it. They also suggested putting the customer, that would be you, listener, into a car that's about 25% more than you were hoping to spend, so that you then get into the car that you were hoping to buy and feel like, ugh, that's not even as good as the one I just sat in. So be aware of these things, that's just part of their tools of the trade to be able to convince you to spend more money. You have to look out for language too, that they'll use that will say things that will convince you and you don't even realize. They might say something like, of course, you know how damaging UV rays are. You're going to want this protection. And it's almost like it's a given. It's not even a yes or no question. They try to avoid the yes or no questions so that you can't say no to it. It's just makes you feel like, well, if everybody else knows that, then I must have to do it too, or else. They might even say things like smart customers choose. Well, of course, you don't want to look like you're not a smart customer. So just being aware of that and the fact that they might state something like, are you looking for the gold or silver package? Well, maybe you're not looking for any package. So the answer can be no to all of those things. Once you actually settle on a price of the car, you're going to be invited back into the back room eventually, especially if you're doing any financing. And they're going to offer you extended warranties. They're going to offer you different kinds of alarms for the car, paint and fabric protection. You need to investigate ahead of time those types of things so that you'll know if it's something you actually need. Maybe you have young kids and fabric protection, if you're just getting a fabric seat, is something you really do need. You need to know that ahead of time. You don't want to be making those decisions when you've been probably at the dealership all day long anyways, trying to decide, I just want to get out of here. And if I say yes, then I can get into it. Those are pure money makers for them, which you are welcome to spend your money on, but realize it's not something that everybody gets if they put it that way. They might also try to get you into a different ride after you've chosen a car with different options. And then you'll have to pay for things like floor mats or a different paint color or a turbo engine or heated seats and mirrors or navigation. Again, you want to just make sure you know what you want. I bought a Honda Accord, which I had many of, love that vehicle. And when I got there, they did put me into a new car that did not include floor mats. So I was going to have to pay more for floor mats. And they said, well, this car doesn't have them, so you'll have to pay X, whatever X was. And I said, no, thanks. And I got up to leave. And they said, what, you're going to leave over floor mats? I said, you're going to let me leave over floor mats? I got floor mats, man, and I didn't pay for them. I mean, if you're gonna let me leave over paying for my floor mats that should be in there anyway. So you have all the power. You can always get up and leave because they want you to buy. You just want the new car, and that's what they feel like they have the power for.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of the floor mats, the other thing that you should try to get, and again, everything it's a question that's asked. If they say no, they say no. Now there's certain things. I mean, I would leave over floor mats. If they would let me leave over floor mats, I would leave over floor mats. There's the spare tire. The car usually comes with a donut, which is obviously useless to you for too long if you have to change your tire. But you can ask for a regular size tire. And oftentimes they'll give you a regular size tire. So there's things you should be asking for. And in addition to that, just kind of going back to, some of the things that you want to do before you go in there, you want to make sure that you've checked with your insurance company to see, what you should expect as far as insurance rates before you've gone in, because you could end up getting, let's say, the sport package And that sport package could cost you an extra couple $100 a year that you were not anticipating.
Great point.
Yeah. Again, with the insurance company, while you're on the phone with them, find out how much gap insurance is. Gap insurance covers the value of the car and the loan amount of the car should that car get totaled. When I was getting that Tercel, my father negotiated gap insurance as part of this. I had no idea what gap insurance was. I just know my father was very upset and they were going back and forth about it for a while because the guy came back and said, okay, we're all set. We're all shaking hands. And my dad looked at the paper and he said, where's the gap insurance? The salesman said, oh, no, we're not including that. My father said, well, we're not getting the car. And the gap insurance might have been like $500. It was just something really small. And we ended up having to sit there maybe another hour or so while this guy supposedly went to go get it approved. And my father would not budge on this gap insurance. When I had a car totaled later on in life, it was the first thing I checked. I said, I know I got that gap insurance. Let me double check. And I did because the car was fairly new. I won't get into details. I will just say the car was fairly new and the car was no longer drivable. And I was so concerned that the car was wasn't worth what I owed the bank. Because at the end of the day, the bank has loaned you $20,000. If that car is only worth $14,000 and your insurance is only willing to pay $14,000, that doesn't take away that $6,000 from the bank. You still owe your bank that difference. And so it's important to make sure you've got this gap insurance coverage so that you're covered in case, God forbid, you get into an accident the second you drive off the lot. Because like we just said, you drive off the lot, you lose that percentage in value, and you still owe the bank what you just signed up for 5 minutes ago. Make sure you know your budget, make sure you know your credit score. And again, don't just look at that payment. You need to look at that whole cost.
Part of the research before you talk to your insurance even is looking ahead of time at the different models of the car, LX, SX, EX, and making sure that you know what it is you want to get. And it will have, maybe some of those models will have that full size tire included versus that donut tire that will just get you to the car dealer. And make sure that you're finding out exactly what you want before you get there. One of the things we have to do is negotiate. And this is where they make it as painful as humanly possible so that you just want to get out of there and accept whatever it is they have to say. But if you acknowledge up front, and it's what I do when I sit down, I know you need to make a profit on this and I am willing to participate in helping you make a profit on it, but I'm not going to pay you too much for it. So no matter what, you need to make sure that you're willing to negotiate, but realize that they are going to negotiate you all day if they possibly can. One of the things that I was reading in NerdWallet was to negotiate remotely, which I really like this idea. I have not done it, but it is the next way I'm going to do it. And that is going in, talking to your salesperson, driving the car, finding the exact model with the exact things you want on it, and then saying to them, thank you very much. I'm going to go home and go shopping. And leave them, give them your phone number, let them contact you, but you want to be able to leave because you take all the power when you leave. And then you know exactly what model, what information you have, and you can call around from dealership to dealership. They're going to try and sell you something no matter who you're talking to. Their question will always be, what is the number that will keep you from walking out the door? Now, I've had that happen once, and I gave them a very low number, in my opinion, and that was what they said I could pay for the car. So in that way, that worked for me because I had already done some research at other dealerships, but just them saying, what's the number that would get you? Then I was willing to do that because again, I knew they had to make their profit, but I didn't want to pay a lot of money. The other thing is when they say they're going to go talk to their manager or the financial manager in the back of the building, they may or may not be talking to somebody. What they're doing is they're making you wait, and they want you to want to be done with this process. Now, they might very well be checking your credit score and doing things like that. What you don't want to do is give up all of your time. If they go and leave you, pop up, walk around the dealership, they're going to find you and they're going to start to realize that every time they walk away, you're getting closer to the door. And again, they don't want you to leave without buying a car. Be ready to leave because they want to sell you that car. And the longer you're there, they get the upper hand.
When you go in to buy this car, you've got two options. You can buy it or you can lease it. Buying is when you've got this you've got a price, you're paying down that price, you're paying down that amount. And when you're done, let's just say it's a 36-month term, you're done. The car is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. You can sell it. You can keep it forever and not have a car payment or, whatever the case is. Or you can lease it. And leasing is cheaper than buying. On a per month basis, it's cheaper than buying. I can say that I didn't buy my first car till less than 10 years ago. I leased 3 or 4 cars before I was able to buy a car. And the reason being is that I'd walk in thinking I wanted to buy a car. I knew I wanted to buy a car. And then I'd get there and quickly realize I couldn't afford to buy a car with my budget. So I leased. Fortunately, I worked from home, so I didn't really have to worry about mileage. But leasing, and I said that without really explaining, but leasing, you get limited amount of miles. It could be 12,000. It could be 15,000. It's been some time since I've leased, but I want to say the last one we're in that ballpark, 12 or 15. If you're someone that doesn't have a long commute, if you're someone that doesn't travel too much, if you're someone that gets itchy after 2 or 3 years because you don't want that car anymore and you want, another new car, then you may want to lease. It may be better for you to lease. It'll be a new car every couple of years. You don't have to worry about the used car problems that tend to come after, 50 or 100,000 miles. And then again, you turn it in and you get yourself another one and you just kind of continue paying. Now, long term, from a financial standpoint, leasing does not make sense. Bottom line. But short term, depending on your situation, leasing may make sense, at least for the time being. But you definitely want to think about, where you are, where you want to be. I know for me, I've been, leasing and buying for 20 years. And I really would like to get to the point where I don't have a car payment. Mm-hmm. But with my personality, I also know that as soon as I'm almost done paying the car that I have now, I'm going to want another one. But I also know that, this car will be worth something. I can I can use that towards the purchase of another car and maybe not pay so much. Buying and leasing is a very personal decision. And it oftentimes is based on your driving habits, as far as the mileages that you put on, and also your personality type, and also your monthly budget. What can you do?
What I found was that a BMW 328i can be leased for 3 years for the same amount that you will pay to purchase a Toyota Camry. So again, we're not talking about the top of the line car in a Toyota Camry specifically. Great car. Don't mean that it's not a great car. I'm just saying you're only going to have that BMW for 3 years where you're going to own that Toyota Camry until you choose to sell it and make that profit for it. No matter what, if you're buying a car, you're going to pay sales tax on it. And if it's about 8% where you live, if you buy a $30,000 car, you're going to pay $2,400 in taxes. You're probably going to have to pay a destination fee, which should be on the sticker price already. You're going to have to pay title and registration, but that's set by your state. So that's a flat fee. But please watch out for, sort of like that back room, watch out for document fees, regional ad fees, financial reserve fees. They're valid fees, but if your fees start to equal more than $100, those are negotiable. Those things are also negotiable. So just essentially every single thing you're doing there, you have the opportunity to say you're going to pay or not pay.
Dealer conveyance fee. That's another one.
No.
That's another one. Yep, absolutely.
It's negotiable, you said?
Oh, yeah, it's negotiable.
Because they're moving from one dealership to another, you mean?
It's ridiculous.
Gotcha. Okay. The last thing that I have is using a car buying service, which is a little bit like Norma mentioned before. There's a flat price that you just pay it. So if you're not interested in haggling, that's something you could use. It's not exactly that, but it's similar. I found that Costco, USAA, AAA, Consumer Reports, Geico, and American Express all offer a car buying service. And what that means is that you contact one of them and say, hey, I would like to buy this car, this model, whatever, and they will go find a dealer that will let you buy that for the lowest price. So they're going to contact dealerships to find the price, and then they'll come back and say, hey, Kathy, here's the best price for this particular model you wanted at this dealership. And then it is my responsibility to go buy that car for that price. The other thing that could happen is you could actually pay a concierge a fee to go negotiate for you. So you just sit at your house. You can pay them anywhere from $200 to $1,000. Again, if they're going to save you $200 to $1,000, then it's worth it to you. But they're going to be able to go negotiate and go deal with their relationships that they have at dealerships. And of course, now there's these Carvana. So some of those concierge are CarWoo and American Car Buying Service, so you could look into them. They're going to let you skip the haggling. They're going to save you money conceivably. They're definitely going to save your time. They, however, might not find the exact car you want. It might have different bells and whistles. And of course, you're going to be spending your money on that. The last thing is this new idea that you can browse online, find the car somewhere like TrueCar, Carvana, Vroom, or Shift, and they will tell you, oh, I have this car. It will be at this place if you want to come buy it as you're picking it up, or we will bring it to you. And I'm sure there's a destination fee with that as well. So there's lots more available to us than there used to be in terms of trying to find the pricing. The bottom line is that buying a car requires your time. You have to do your research ahead of time, and you're probably going to spend some time in the car dealership. You can avoid the car dealership stuff by getting up and moving around and making them worry about you, but you're in the driver's seat. The other thing I've heard, I don't know if you've heard this, Norma, but I always do try to do it, is go at the end of a month because the salesmen are trying to get their quota.
Absolutely.
They have so many cars they need to sell. So I try to wander in on the 29th, and then I dilly-dally around till the end of the month because I know that they're getting more anxious about selling me something.
Well, and not just the end of the month, but also the end of the car year. The car year, I feel like it's August when the new models come out. So the best time to get a car a brand new car would be when the next year's models are coming out because they're trying to empty the lot from the old model. So that's another time to get it. Oftentimes, car dealerships are really dealing in units. What they can get out of the lot is what's important to them, not necessarily by price, but by unit.
So thanks for listening to Finances and Car Buying. We know that you chose to listen today, and we are grateful. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe here and share. It means a lot to both of us. Please let us know what you think on Facebook or Twitter by going to our website at financesand.net and giving us your ideas. That's how we're coming up with what we're going to podcast about. Finances and does not provide tax or legal service, and nothing in this podcast is to be construed as such. Always consult a tax, accounting, or legal professional for advice on your specific situation. Remember, we went to school, so you don't have to.